For me, Jesus' interaction with the woman at the well is one of the most important stories of his ministry. This is my third video to dig into this story like we dug into a small selection of verses in Genesis. See, I think there are at least 4 topics within this story that are worth digging into. Jesus' decision to talk with the Samaritan, his insights into the woman's personal history, the clarification of the command to love God provided within the story, and the woman's understanding of the role of the Messiah, alongside Jesus' declaration that Jesus, was the Messiah. Last session we looked into his radical decision to talk with a Samaritan. By looking into the roots of the Jewish-Samaritan animosity, we were able to see that his decision was possibly a radical declaration that we are to clear all our historical baggage and follow Jesus, follow God. So let's delve into Jesus' insight into the woman's past. Now, a common erroneous interpretation of this passage concludes that the Samaritan woman was of ill repute, a view oftentimes supported by the detail that she came to the well alone during the heat of the day. However, Jesus' lack of rebuke challenges this interpretation. You see, unlike other narrative encounters, such as with the woman caught in adultery, Jesus offers no condemnation, and he does not command her to go and sin no more. However, when we examine this story within the context of first century Samaritan culture, the historical, legal, and cultural realities suggest more a tragic situation than a moral failing. We know women in this era, and for a long time afterward, could not legally initiate marriage or divorce. Having 5 husbands likely indicates that she had been repeatedly widowed, divorced, or abandoned, rather than reflecting any personal shortcoming. We also know that young women were frequently married to significantly older men in a society with short life expectancies. Furthermore, the practice of levirate marriage obligated a surviving brother to marry his deceased brother's widow, which could account for multiple marriages within the same family line. Further, a single older woman without male protection had no economic standing. Her arrangement with a man who was not her husband was more likely a desperate necessity for survival, potentially reducing her to forced servitude. This vulnerability better explains her social marginalization and her isolation from the other village women, why she was at the well in the heat of the day, alone. Now, some commentators note there may be a symbolic link between the 5 husbands and the 5 foreign nations with their respective gods, their respective Baals, meaning master or husband, that were introduced into Samaria by the Assyrians centuries earlier. However, I see this as possibly an afterthought by John or the commentators rather than as the reason for Jesus' interactions at the well. I'm a proponent of allegorical rather than strictly literal interpretation of Scripture, but I defer to Jesus for direct explanation rather than to more rabbinical or priestly interpretations that require some special knowledge. When the woman returned to her village declaring, "He told me everything I ever did," she wasn't making a meaningless statement. She was announcing that the Messiah knew her entire tragic history and met her with compassion rather than condemnation. Jesus knows you and me too. This I believe. Aloha.